Always a pleasure to have you with us today, our listening audience, to the Healthcare Leadership Excellence Podcast. We know that you have plenty of choices of listening, and we are just grateful that you're with us. And today it will be definitely worth your time because we've got someone who has been in a lot of companies with a lot of industries and bring some great perspective to us. We had a good pre-call, have some good questions. As you're aware, our listeners are aware, it usually turns into much more of a conversation than just questions. So I would like to welcome to our program today Susan Inouye. And Susan, a person that has been in over 600 companies, 40 industries. Give us a brief background. First, welcome and give us a brief background on what brings you to us today.
Wow. Thanks, Carl. It's great to be here with you. Yeah,
Same. Thank you.
absolutely. Um, I think I came to coaching. I have always wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And so, way back when, it started with me volunteering at the mission and feeding the homeless on Thanksgiving Day. And, those things, they gave me a lot of meaning and purpose. And so, I looked for other ways to be able to make that difference. And I discovered, oddly enough, the transformative power of films to change people's lives.
Yeah, go into that for us. That was
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. Well, as a young girl, I would sit in front of the big screen and literally be transformed by the stories of other people. So I really got a taste of how stories really affected us, teached us different things, and literally could change the way we think. So, because of that fascination, I decided to head to Los Angeles, film capital of the world. I was on scholarship to the University of Southern California, but my major was mathematics and my minor was music. I did
Oh
that.
my.
Yeah, I did that because it would please my Japanese American parents. And also, it came easy for me for some reason. Yeah. So I graduated with honors. It was several years later that I entered a competition at the American Film Institute for the Directing Workshop for Women. And it was against all odds that I was one of a very small select group of women that was chosen to get a $5,000 grant to do a 30-minute short. And my film Solo, it went to festivals, it won awards. I ended up in the office of Kathleen Kennedy, who was then the assistant to Steven Spielberg. I thought, Carl, I thought, this is it. My life is changing forever, right? It did, but not in the way I thought. What happened is that I couldn't get hired as a first-time director. And finally, one of the people that I knew, he was a TV producer. He said, Susan, I hate to tell you this, but it's much easier to hire a first time man director than it is a woman. Now, I was crushed. But when I reflected and thought about why I was interested in films, and it was really to help other people transform their lives, I realized that it started with my own. So that started me on this amazing journey. Uh, Working with teachers from the world of doing to teachers to the world of being. And one day, and I was really changing. It was really amazing. One day, a business colleague, she came up to me and she said, Susan, I want some of that. And I looked at her and went, what do you want? She said, I've seen just positive transformation in you that I want you to coach me. I'm starting my own business.
Wow.
Yeah, you got to understand back then coaching wasn't popular, but she was persistent. I told her I'm working in sales in a national telecommunications company, but I did it on the side. What happened was is that as I continued to develop myself into the best of who I was, and I helped her become a better person and leader. I became the number one salesperson in my national company, and she made her first million in her first year.
Oh, good job.
Yeah. And she said to me, Susan, this is how you're going to make a difference in people's lives. So I've just been very fortunate. As you mentioned, I've worked with over 600 companies in 40 industries, Fortune 500 companies to small businesses. The last 13 years, I've been really helping execs and senior managers with their young people, millennials and Gen Zs. And I use a process called Salbona, which at the heart is really about becoming the best version of yourself. And the byproduct is, at least for my clients, is an increase in profitability, sometimes by 50% in only 6 months.
So let's dig in there.
Yeah.
Salbona is, if I understand it, from the Zulu language and meaning I see you. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. It's a Zulu greeting, mean I see you. And it really
Okay.
is about seeing the whole person.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
So
you
how
go
did
ahead.
you come up with that?
How did I come up with it? Well, I didn't actually come up with it. So what I love about Salbona leadership, it wasn't something that someone just came up with, thought, oh, this is really good. I'll come up with. It's actually really grounded in proven results. The history of it is that it was born out of the millennial generation.
Hmm.
It was created by a man, former CEO, Tony LaRay, who sold a very successful business and followed a passion of his to really help inner city millennial youth through mentoring programs. And he sold his business and he went into this building this nonprofit. And when I met him, he had transformed and saved the lives of thousands of inner city millennial youth through mentoring programs called Talbona Leadership, with unprecedented results. Now, I found him because my clients were calling me more than 13 years ago complaining about their young people. And at the time, that was millennials. So they would say to me things like, Susan, uh, who would who would quit their job without another one to go to? Okay. Or who would have the nerve to come in my office and ask me how they could have my job in 5 years and they'd only been here 6 months, right? So a lot of pain and suffering between generations. And one of my clients knew that I was looking for some kind of method that was not just based in theory and academics, but was proven and grounded results. He was the one that introduced me to Tony, said, you got to meet this guy. And I did. And I was fascinated because he had actually gone into the community. He asked these young people over a decade ago when I had met him, what would it take to engage with you? And out of that, he created what he called the gift centered approach, which was at the heart of the way he led, which he called Salbona. So he, I asked him if I could come see one of his mentoring sessions. And so he said, yeah, I went. And Carl, I can tell you, there was this community of people of different generations, genders, ethnic background, and the deep connection that they had in the way that they engaged each other that brought out the best in who they were. At the end of the evening, I said to Tony, I need to take this into the corporate world because I saw a way of helping my execs, but also creating cultures of belonging. And so now it's almost been like about almost 20 years, and it's in over 30 countries. And it was the subject of my book, Leadership's Perfect Storm, which we were just fortunate at the end of 2018. It hit the number one bestseller in leadership and business management. It sold all over the world.
Okay, so one of the goals of this podcast is that our listeners can get off the call and say, I can use what Susan taught me today. So you'd have to be living in a cave as a higher level manager, perhaps in 40s and 50s. Um, and exactly what you said, these newer in the work site, Gen Zs, and there's a lot of stereotypes. I mean, they're super creative, hyper smart, and yet drive a lot of my clients absolutely crazy. by some of their demands and thinking. So walk us through for those callers that are those listeners that are thinking, wow, how I wish I had Susan here to talk about John, who is 25, brilliant, but just doesn't get a clue about America's worksite. Give us some counsel there. What would you tell our listener that's thinking that?
Right. So I think, first of all, I'll say this. When I was looking for a way to help my clients, I had a lot of different ways to help them in many different areas. 5 ways to do time management, 5 ways to negotiate, 5 ways to be a better. I mean, there were so many ways that I couldn't even remember all of them. And I know my executives couldn't either. So I was looking for a through line and thread that if you did some simple things, like maybe 3 to 5 simple things, that if you did these things and went deep, everything else would happen. And the through line and thread that I found was Salbona. And the reason I say this, and so for your listeners, one thing that we have to understand that the younger generation has many needs, but the 3 needs that keep echoing, and I have found this in my conversations with them when I do keynotes at conferences and things like that, or work in organizations. They want to feel heard, they want to use their gifts, and they want to have meaning and purpose in their lives. Now, what's interesting about this, when I am speaking in front of a group of people of all generations, leaders of all generations, and I ask how many of you want that, every hand goes up because it's not a generational need, it's a human need. And so, what I'm going to tell you definitely works with young people, but it also works with all other generations as well. Because what Salbona is about, it's about bringing the humanity back into the workplace and into the way we lead our people. And we can talk more about that. So one of the things is that the 3 ways to be able to answer those questions, if they want to feel heard, you have to connect and receive. If they want to use their gifts, you have to see their gifts. If they want to have meaning and purpose in their lives, you have to create a culture where they feel a part of something greater than themselves. And the way that we do that, and I mention it in the book, is through what we call the 5 leader shifts, the shifts that leaders have to make in order to thrive in this century. So, do you want me to go over those?
Oh, absolutely. I'm ready to write.
Okay. So, the first one is I'm going to say them and I'll go over them briefly. So, from control to connect and receive, from conformity to see and accept, from expectations to intentions, from authority to authenticity, and from bottom line myopia to belonging. So if we go over the first one, from control to connect and receive, most executives that I know over senior managers want to control the situation, right? And it's part of a leadership style called command and control. I tell you what to do, Carl, and you're expected to do it, right? This
Pretty
does
easy.
this does not work with millennials or Gen Zs. So you have to shift to connect and receive. Connection is not connectivity or communication, is how they feel when they're with us as leaders. And receiving is a very overlooked trait in leadership because we're taught it's better to give than receive. But building the body of a leader means being able to receive the ideas, being able to receive the thoughts, being able to receive praise, criticism, help with openness and curiosity. Now, I'm going to tell you these things, and the book goes into further all the different practices, and maybe I can also share some stories.
I would love that.
Yeah. The second one is from conformity to see and accept. Now, millennials, especially, they have a saying, one size does not fit all. They want to be seen as unique individuals, not part of a mass herd. And so when you see and accept them for who they are in their entirety, good and bad, they begin to see and accept you for who you are, and a different conversation unfolds. Not one where we're lecturing to each other, but one where we are listening and learning from each other. Can I share a story with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is a great story because it's really, for some reason, it just happened in a way that I didn't even anticipate. So I'll call this person Kathy. Kathy is the director of tech support. And I was coaching some of the executives in the company, not Kathy. But Kathy came up to me one day and she said, Susan, I need your help. I don't know what to do. I'm going to have to fire Jack. And Jack was a millennial. He's part of my team. He's one of the best people, but he's not meeting his monthly quota of new customers served. And I said, so we talked some more. Kathy had used what she had learned was done on herself, which is command and control leadership style on Jack. She was trying to conform him to what she learned, which was the carrot and the stick. So she gave him incentives, the carrot, that didn't work. She gave him the stick, reprimands, that didn't work. And she said, I'm running out of ideas. We talked about gifts. I explained to her what they were, and I asked him, what is Jack's gifts? Now, Kathy looked at me and she said, I don't know. But that's not unusual because gifts are a natural part of who we are. They are what we were born to bring into this world, and we do it without thinking about it. So I reframed the question to her and said, Kathy, tell me, why did you hire Jack? And her eyes lit up and she said, because he's not like any other tech rep. He doesn't talk down in that techie language. He literally is, people call for him by name, our customers. He's generous with his time. He can solve the most complex issues. And Susan, he can coach and train the other, people in our department so well. I said, huh. So I said to her, but she said, I got to fire him. I said, okay, let's just step back and see a bigger picture. I said, okay, he might be bringing in serving less new customers. So tell me, what is his retention rate on his existing base compared to the other reps? And she goes, I don't know. Why? I said, because he may be serving less new customers, but retaining more of the base, and that might be more profitable. So she said, yeah. So she said she'd find out. So she went and she dug around and she found out. She called me late the next day. She said, you'll never guess. Jack has the highest retention rate of customers compared to any of the other reps, and he is more profitable. I said, great. I said, please go to your boss, buy us some time, and let's brainstorm. So now the first thing I say to my clients in regards to this kind of situation, you have to ask, and I asked Kathy, what are the gifts that are trying to come out in his bad behavior? And so she went down the list and we brainstormed. He easily gains rapport with people. He's tech savvy. He's very bright and intellectual. He is good at solving the most complex issue. He's generous. He's good at coaching and training. And she went on. I said, okay, next question is, how can we redirect those gifts so they can better serve Jack, you, and the department? And she thought about it and she came up with a really great answer. She said, what if we had him create a training manual and gave all the secrets away to the other reps so they don't have to come to him anymore and he'll have more time? I said, great. But what if you took that training manual, because one of his gifts is training and coaching, and had him train the entire department? She got excited. I said, but you have to go to Jack, acknowledge his gifts, and see if he'd be open. So she did. He was flattered. And so, long story short, this is what happened. We did a lot of things, but the company got a training manual. Jack trained the entire department, and retention and productivity went up across the board. The third thing that happened was Jack actually broke down what he did so naturally well. And he started to find areas where he could be more effective and efficient. And now, Carl, he started to make his monthly quotas of new customers served, which was so cool. And then they had 3 straight years of the highest retention rate. And Kathy was promoted from a director to a general manager. So,
Wow, what a great story.
it's the power of not going, you need to do this, you need to make your quotas. If you don't make your quotas, we're going to punish you, blah, blah, blah. This is a different, Salbona enters through the gifts and it weaves throughout, right? So that's, yeah, go ahead.
So a scenario, um, working with a medical center and dealing with a director who is absolutely results oriented, brilliant physician. But her comment to me last year when I was working the setting was, Carl, I have a job to do. I'm running this department and we just need to grow up, forget this culture stuff and do our jobs. And so I appreciate what you're trying to do, but really at the end of the day, let's just treat each other like adults. If you had been sitting in that seat, in my seat, how would you have guided her at that time?
Well, the first of all, I would, when I talk to my clients when we first engage, I let them know what I call the pebble in the pond effect, which is that I can go out there and find out everything about your people that you feel is wrong. But what if the problem is you? And the pebble in the pond effect is that if we look at you and your gifts and how you are coming off in the world, and we make you a better version of yourself, when we drop that pebble, which is you, into that pond, your goodness will ripple out to touch everybody. Now, I know you want everybody to grow up, but we're talking about a different generation. So I might add this. You have to understand that when people enter the workforce, and this is based on neuroscience, their brain is not fully developed. They're acting out of the emotional part of their brain. In fact, in girls, it's not fully developed until 25, in guys, till about 27. And so when they're acting out of the emotional part of the brain, first of all, they make decisions without thinking about long-term consequences. They don't strategically plan. They don't solve problems in the way that they should. How can you, as a leader, help them to develop into the best version of themselves, knowing this information, that their prefrontal cortex, which is the logical part of their brain, needs to be developed? And what can you do to develop that? Now, if they don't know, I can give them clues as to how to do it. But I start there because I get them to start to think about the fact that we don't come into corporations ready-made. And by the way, the Gallup had a study saying that bosses today need to be coaches. That's the change in being a boss today. You have to know how to coach your people in a way that empowers them, in a way that they want to do things. Otherwise, you're just doing this. Mm-hmm. And you're not understanding who they are. And millennials, which are 75% of the global workforce last year, they will walk out and they don't care because they have their parents to go to live with. They do. They do. Mm-hmm. And I can also give her a story. I'd probably give her a story of, I got a call from two partners of a firm. And they said to me, Susan, you'll never believe what happened to us. And I said, what? We had a whole department, an IT department, come into our office. They had signed a piece of paper saying that if we didn't get rid of their manager by the end of the week, they were all leaving. And every one of them had signed it. Okay, this would never happen in my generation, but every one of them signed it. And they said, well, what's going on? And the spokesperson for this millennial group said, we have been telling you for the last month how terrible this manager was. He wasn't listening to us. He was very abusive, all these things. And every single time you said you do something, you did nothing. And it's because you weren't really listening to us, and we've had it. And so these two partners go, Susan, what do we do? Oh my God, right? So VI entered. I'd say to her, you don't want to get to the point where you have your people, all of them rebelling against you, because they will. That's the kind of generation they are. But it gives her some things to think about, because where it really starts is with you. I'd say it starts with you. You know,
Well, that's a great story. I want to know how to end it. How did you navigate that one?
oh yeah, no, it was really good. It started with them. They really realized that they didn't listen. I took them through the 5 leaderships that, that are in the book. And what happened is they started to really connect and receive the ideas and thoughts. They were present. And their people could feel it, that their minds weren't elsewhere. I also connect them into, we looked at their gifts, and although they had other gifts like drive and determination, they had the gift to follow through on commitment, they were smart, they were strategically brilliant. One of them had the gift of compassion for others, and we reconnected him with his compassion for others by developing the intelligence of his heart. And this is all backed by neuroscience through practices of appreciation. And all of a sudden, in being able to ignite that compassion, he started to see the gifts in his people. And he said to me, I can't believe it's hard. I can't believe how smart they are. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, people started to feel that they were valued, they were seen for who they are. And little by little, we literally turned the situation around. And
One item that I go ahead.
They became better.
Excellent. In our pre-call, one of the things that stood out, and you've referenced it a couple of times, a lot of the writings about emotional intelligence and being a whole person can sometimes get pretty fluffy. But as we did the pre-call, you talked about the head, heart, and body, and how a lot of the research around that part of emotional intelligence is really connected with neuroscience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially for the medical listening audience here. Could you explain a bit about your views of emotional intelligence, why it's important, and some of the science behind it? I mean, I'm fascinated. I'd heard it before, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Right.
That we're hiring people that are 3 or 4 years away from brain maturity. and yet we're expecting, 40-year-old performance out of someone who neurologically isn't there.
Right.
Not in a disparaging way, but in a biologic way. So walk us through some of the neuroscience behind emotional intelligence.
Right. And there's another thing I'll talk about too, which is how can they help them to develop their prefrontal cortex, which is really an important part, right?
Yeah.
So everybody I'm sure knows the book by Daniel Goleman, New York Times bestselling author of Emotional Intelligence. Mm-hmm. Beautiful book. However, in the book, it doesn't tell you how to develop emotional intelligence. It just says that you need it, and it's more important than the intelligence of our heads or our cognitive intelligence, right? And so therein lies, there is an organization, it's called the Institute of Heart Math in Northern California, that has actually done research for many, many years on heart intelligence. And they discovered that there are certain practices that are associated with appreciation. That if you do these practices, it starts to develop your emotional intelligence, your heart, so that what happens is that it opens up to your intuitive knowing. Okay. And emotional intelligence is not about being emotional. It's about building emotions into that intelligence, into the cells of your body. And you have to do it through what we call somatic practices. Now, head, heart, and body. We have the head, which is our intellect, our heart, which is our emotional intelligence, and our body, which is our somatic intelligence. And somatic intelligence and emotional intelligence is 2/3 of our intelligence, and it has wisdom that the head does not. So the heart opens up to intuitive knowing, the body opens up to gut instinct, and they are two distinct different things. And if you read more about it, you'll find out that there are millions of neurons that form a brain in the heart and a brain in your belly or body. And they've discovered this. Now, these things have wisdom, and there's ways to bring it out. Having a coach like myself that knows how to give you the different practices that allow you to develop the habits that lead to competence in these areas is important, because I can tell you what to do and give you insight. Like, for example, patience. Patience, a lot of people know, especially in your field, the doctors and stuff, know that they have to be patient, right? They have to be patient. But until someone gives you, and being a doctor, you have to know what is the prescription I need to give to this person, or the practice that they do on a consistent basis that they can embody, so that they can then have the habits that lead to their competency, where they're naturally patient and not trying to act it. That takes the development of the heart and the body. And so there's different kinds of practices that allow us to be able to do that. Oh, can I share another story of mine?
Please do. Yes.
Okay. So this one, wow, this one. So I had, okay, I'll call her, what do I want to call her? I'll call her Beth. Beth was the head of production of an event planning company. I was called in to work with her because she was on the verge of burnout and she needed work-life balance. Now, this is very common in the health care industry, burnout, work-life balance, right? Beth had a gift. One of her core gifts, we entered through the portal of Salbona, was planning, because there wasn't anything she didn't plan. Planning helped her control the situation, but it also prevented her people from contributing their gifts to get the results she needed, because she always planned ahead everything, right? But she was overusing this gift until it became her weakness. And so I talked to her about it, and I said, Beth, I said, there's another side to your gift. It's called your blind spot. It's what you're blind to and need to learn. It's the opposite of that gift. What do you think the opposite of planning is? And she said to me, chaos. I said, no. But we started talking, and she finally got it. She goes, oh, it's letting go, going with the flow, and being in uncertainty, which is very hard for a planner.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I said, you need to, through practices that I'll give to you, we'll develop this into a strength. So you'll have the capacity to do both. And it's not one or the other, it's the integration of both, so that when things don't go according to plan, you can head in another direction. So she was open. She said, okay, I'm open. Now, Carl, part of my journey is to listen to what my clients do and to give them practices that would allow her to start to let go. And it wasn't the act of letting go, it's how you feel in your body when you do let go. Because when you let go, you're training your body to feel something different. And every time you do that, you're creating a new home base for your body. Okay. So we did a lot of simple letting go practices, like letting go of when her people made mistakes. Instead of correcting them, she let it go and gave it back to them and coached them to be able to fix it.
Excellent.
She let go of always looking at her phone. This was, yeah, she's always checking her phone or text or whatever. And that was really hard. One practice that there are two. She wanted to get rid of stuff in her house. She was a bit of a pack rat. So I said, would you be open to a practice of letting go with the things in your house? She said, yeah, I would. It was hard for her because,
Yeah.
it's like,
I don't know about this idea.
but I said, look, it's not about getting rid of stuff. It's about the feeling that you have when you let it go. So we brainstormed and she came up with, I said, we need to come up with a ritual. She found 3 nonprofits she wanted to donate stuff to. There was stuff that she could easily let go of, but the things that had memory, that had special memories, her ritual was she would hold it next to her heart. She would think of a particular time when this meant so much to her. She would then take a photograph and then she would put it in the pile of one of the nonprofits. Every single time she started to notice what that feeling was of letting go. And it started to really open up that space, that it cracked it open. Now, the thing that really cracked it open was one day she said to me, and as you notice, I didn't give them any practices that they're not already saying they want to do or whatever.
Yeah.
She said to me, I've always wanted to learn trapezing.
Oh my goodness.
I said, what? She said, when I was a kid in New York, I saw a guy on a flying trapeze and I said, I want to do that.
Oh my heavens.
I said, do you still want to do that? She said, yeah. I said, okay. I said, you'd be willing to take trapeze lessons? She said, yeah. So I researched it out. There was the New York School of Trapeze on the Santa Monica Pier here in Los Angeles. Went to talk to the guy about why I wanted her to take trapeze lessons. And he said, oh my gosh, I have a lot of execs that do that. I said, you're kidding. He said, no. She went to take trapezing. Oh my God, Carl, she was in heaven. She replaced the fear of letting go with a feeling of freedom.
Wow.
It
That's a
was,
jump.
oh, it was huge. And she started to let go of whole projects. She started to coach her people, trust them, all these things. Her young people were elated because now they could use their gifts to contribute. She avoided burnout. And now Beth today is learning silks. I don't know, that's a part of trapeze. Silks are the silks that, and you wrap your leg around it. It's very hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she took
Incredible
she
strength.
took videos of her trapezing and she sent them to me. She said, Susan, look at me.
So, as we wrap up here, what would be the most important takeaway that our listeners could learn from you that we haven't mentioned yet? It might be your book, it might be something you haven't mentioned. What would be one more nugget? You've given us many over the last few minutes. What would be one more thing I want to say? What would that be?
Oh wow, I'm trying to think which one I want to give to you. Um, okay. Because times have been challenging right now, and many companies are laying off people, and on the other side, people are leaving companies, and
Mhm.
even executives have been leaving. Huge exodus of executives. The budget that companies and execs usually cut out when times are tough is growth and development.
Yep.
And I want to say that it's the reason is they don't see a direct connection between the growth and development of the people that remain and increase productivity, profitability, and revenue.
Mhm.
But I want to say that the most successful companies see that direct connection. There was a study done by the Gallup organization last year, State of the Global Workforce. And in it, they showed that 79% of employees worldwide are disengaged. And globally, it's costing the global economy 438 US dollars in lost productivity. Now, what they also found was is that 73% of managers were disengaged. And where the managers go, their people follow.
Mhm.
However, they found that the companies that didn't experience a decrease, that did not experience a decrease in engagement, were those that continuously grew and developed their people, especially their managers.
So hit that figure again, 438
billion US
Billion.
dollars in lost productivity. And so when times are tough, we have to continue to grow our people because they are the ones that are going to innovate the next best thing that's going to keep our company surviving and thriving. And what I say to companies, you have to adopt. If you want to get your people to take your company to the next level, if you want to get your people used to change, because that's a big complaint I have, with AI, people don't want to change. Then require them, give them a budget every year that they are required to use. They can engage the services of a coach, they can take leadership classes, whatever. They have to learn something new. They have to bring it back to the team and teach the team. And what happens is, in them constantly changing, they get used to change. They start looking for where they can help improve the company. They find the little things instead of you putting change on them, they bring the change to you.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I am sure that there's a listener out there, if not many, that says, I'd like to be able to contact Susan. Tell me more about how I can do that.
Yeah. So we created a page, my PR people. It's called Susan Inouye. I'll say it and then I'll spell it. SusanInouye.com/HLE. So it's SusanInouye.com/H is in healthcare, L is in leadership, E is in excellent. And if you go to this page, you can download a free chapter of the book. You can get a link to the book on Amazon, and all the proceeds go to the nonprofit organization Youth Mentoring Connection. Or they can book a free discovery call with me, a consultation, and I'm happy to answer questions or tell them more about my services.
Excellent. And we will put contact information in the show notes as we always do. Susan, this has been a very, very fast few minutes. So thank you so much. It went so well. I appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you so much, Carl. It's been lovely being with you.